Hey folks, doing my post kind of late today because I had one of those days that just bounced from one thing to the next. Um, but I had an interesting revelation today. This is again kind of continuing in this pattern of, observing my mind patterns and where they're going, what they're trying to tell me. And but this sort of like came in from the outside. Like I came across a video yesterday. Forget if it was on Facebook or like where I might have been an email by a guy named Mike Gillette, and he does like a mindset coaching thing. He sells a program for that, and I think this video was just like his pitch video for that. But one of the things he said kind of struck me and sort of like I guess it didn't completely reframe what I'm going through, but it definitely informed what I'm going through and kind of like added what I thought was a helpful dose of measuredness into the way I'm looking at it. So what he said was, he's talking about mindset, and he's talking about how the mind does two things. The mind is a problem-solving device, and it's always seeking efficiencies. And it has to seek efficiencies because if it had to figure out new answers every time it comes up against a problem, or if it had to rethink through the answer to a given problem when the same problem came up multiple times, that would be horribly evolutionarily detrimental. It couldn't adapt. It couldn't assimilate new behaviors and then make them automatic, and thereby allow our brains to do other things, to sort of free up processing power and headspace for other things. So efficiency is really the reason why our minds develop these grooves and why our minds develop these patterns. And that just kind of struck me because I had, there's a way in which when you start doing this work, and especially, depending on, what the context is and who you're talking to, basically, who you're reading, there can sometimes be a sense that the ego is evil. Like that it's like a force inside of us doing something bad. My ego is the reason that I don't want to change. My ego is my complex of patterns and habits that are no longer serving me and that I have outlived, they've outlived their usefulness and I need to move beyond them. So there's a way in which we often frame them in this negative light because they've become patterns that we don't want to do anymore. We want to actually transcend them. We want to move beyond them. But in that process of saying, they're no longer useful, we sometimes turn the ego into something bad. And there's a kind of judgment that can occur, self-judgment, judgment of other people, whatever. And when Mike Gillette just mentioned the idea of efficiencies and that's what the mind is really doing, that's why it creates habits, And I know this, again, this is like piano 101. Why do you practice? Well, you practice to make certain things automatic so that you don't have to think about them and you can do the next thing, So, and that happens on multiple levels. At first, it's like just getting the notes down. Then it's getting phrases down. Then it's getting things so deeply in your hands that you're not thinking about the notes and phrases anymore. You're thinking about the arc of the piece or the entire emotional world that's being created. So those efficiencies are the way we evolve. They're the way we build knowledge. They're the way we build skill. They're the way we build anything. And it was just kind of helpful to be reminded of that because, again, as I'm in the process of, I feel like, and I hope, dismantling some unhelpful patterns, some of the patterns I've talked about around money or around self-worth, all this stuff. It's helpful to remember that they're not evil. There's nothing malicious about my mind. It's just doing what it's supposed to do. It's doing what it's designed to do. It's doing what it does very well. And so when we engage with something that's really not serving us, or it's that in fact, potentially really harming us, and we want to get rid of it, but we can have an understanding for why it is and a kind of not just empathy, but like true objectivity, that there's no judgment here. There's no there's nothing bad. We are just trying to make changes to a system that requires a fair amount of energy input in order to make changes, because if it made changes too easily, it wouldn't work for us in the same way. So it's just something that kind of flashed for me as I was listening to this 2-minute video. The guy's talking about how you change your mindset, how you change your habits, and it just zinged for me that was really relevant to what I'm going through right now and what I'm processing and what I'm the very process that I'm engaged in. And that it's just always helpful to frame things in as objective a light as possible, which is ultimately a positive light. True objectivity contains an inherent positivity. If it's coming through in the moment and it's truly what is arising now, there's light in it. There's inherent positivity in everything. And when we can take away some of the judgments around what we consider our problems, that can kind of come through and just reframe the whole process in a really nice way. So that's my thought for the day. Thank you folks so much for watching. I love you all. Again, as always, your comments and your likes and your views mean a lot to me. It's really, really cool to have you all kind of chiming in. So much love to everyone. I'll see you tomorrow.